Hey Tube, Decimate here, and today I want to talk about the High Elves faction. This is one of the easier factions in the game, I think, for a lot of people, and that's due to the high number of awesome supports that they've got. And you don't even really need to bring in any crazy damage dealers here. You can get away with one, or even half of one. I used a Tyrell to finish this faction as my only damage dealer, and he was in a lifesteal build for Clan Boss. And didn't have the greatest stats when I did this, and he's probably not a lot different than what he was then now, as far as I know. So we can dive into the index here, take a look at what we've got as options, and hopefully you can knock this one out pretty easily. So let's quickly just run through the legendaries here. We got Eldenarl up first. She's pretty much just known for her poison combust here on her A3. You're not going to be stacking a lot of poisons in this faction for Faction Wars, most likely, so I wouldn't really rate her very highly for Faction Wars, but she can do some work for you in dungeons. Shiramani, on the other hand, is going to be fantastic for Faction Wars. She's got an AoE freeze here on her A3, so she's going to come in and do a ton of CC for you. Really good champion for the arena and other dungeons as well. Basilius is kind of the same deal. He's got an A3 here that has a 75% chance of an AoE stun and also decreases turn meter if the stun isn't placed. I don't see this guy used a lot, but he's actually really good for Faction Wars, and he can be pretty helpful for dungeons as well. Next up, Lysandra, probably the best, if not second best, speed lead in the game for the arena, but also a dungeon goddess and Faction War goddess as well. She's got a amazing A3 here that gives your team increased speed, reduces the turn meter of the enemies by 30%, and increases your team's by 30%. So this is a huge turn meter swing in any battle, and she's amazing CC because of that, and also her A2, which fully depletes one target's turn meter. Her A1 has an interesting mechanic here where it transfers all debuffs from her onto her target, so that is very nice as well. Great champion. I do have her. She's not necessary to do the faction by any means, but she will probably be on your team if you do have her. Next up is Royal Huntsman. A little hard to keep alive in Faction Wars. He's pretty squishy, pretty low defense, good speed though. He can come in and do some work for you with this decreased defense on an AoE basis, and it will land if the attack is critical. He does have a big hit here, ignores 100% defense on his A3. And his A1 can give him a increased attack buff if the attack is critical. So obviously you want a high crit rate on him. I wouldn't recommend him necessarily for Faction Wars specifically. If you've got another maybe defense-based damage dealer, that'd probably be a better option. Yannicka is a attack-based champion as well. She can actually put out some decent damage. I wouldn't necessarily rate her highly for Faction Wars. She's not bringing a lot of other utility to the higher end stage of the Faction Wars, but if you've got her, she will probably be on your team as a damage dealer. You'll just have to cover the CC with somebody else. Next up, we've got Ethos, one of the best arena nukers in the game. He can deal a ton of damage. This A3 is always critical, so you don't need to necessarily build as much crit rate on him. If you're just relying on this as a single kind of slam in the arena, you do want some crit rate on him if you're going to use him for Faction Wars, for his other abilities to crit. But this can place a weaken on a target, and his A1 has a chance of giving him an extra turn and also decreases max HP. You just love to see that. Nobody wants that. Next, we've got Bellinor, another Void legendary. He's not great for Faction Wars. He can be pretty useful in Spider, useful on Clan Boss, but for Faction Wars, I would probably go with somebody else a little easier to keep alive. But he can do some pretty good damage for you, but there are probably better options in this faction in the Epics and Rare categories, unfortunately. And last up, we've got Arbiter. I think everyone knows Arbiter. If you are at the stage where you're looking to complete stage 21s, you've probably got her, but if not, there are, again, great rares and epics in this faction, and you don't necessarily need your Arbiter to be able to complete this faction. Alright, let's take a look at the epics. First up is going to be Royal Guard. He is an amazing champion. It took me about 8 months before I pulled my first Royal Guard, and only Royal Guard for that matter. But he is great for dungeon speedruns, and he is great for Faction Wars if you can keep him alive. which is probably going to take a revive champion. He is going to be squishy if you've built him up for dungeons to do this A2 max HP AoE hit, which is kind of what he's known for. In Faction Wars, this A3 is actually pretty good as well. It can put a couple decreased speeds out there for you, and also decreased turn meter. That's a 4 times at random, and then his A1 can put out a decreased defense for you. So great champion, just a little bit hard to keep alive in Faction Wars, but if you've got your Arbiter or another revived champion like Relequary Tender, you can definitely bring him in and he will speed up your runs, but he is gonna die. Next up, Tyrell. Tyrell was on the team that I used to clear this first, and he was, like I said, my only damage dealer. Great champion for Faction Wars, great for Clan Boss, great for Dungeons, fantastic champion. He has a AoE decreased defense, and if they're also under a decreased attack, which he places with his A1, he can put someone to sleep. And then his A3 has got some turn meter reduction and can also place a stun if their turn meter is low enough. And then his A1 is placing that decreased attack, and it's a 2-hitter. So this guy can deal pretty good damage for a deep defense-based champion, and has a lot of other utility going for him as well. Next, Thanasil. He is a great healer and protector for your team. He's going to throw out increased defense for your team and a heal on his A2. On his A3, he is going to do an AoE and decrease all enemy buffs by 1 turn, which can be pretty nice in Faction Wars. You could also throw him in a stun set maybe and get a little bit of utility out of that. But he's got a sleep on his A1 as well, so not a bad CC champion that also offers some healing and protection if you build him that way. Next up, we've got Luthia. I wouldn't really rate her too highly for Faction Wars. I don't see her getting a lot of play. She can put out some decreased speed for you, and a very small chance of landing a freeze on a 3 times at random, so not the best champion for Faction Wars or really anywhere, but you know, if you've got one built up, maybe she's doing some work for you, and you could bring her in. Next, Verges. He just got a buff fairly recently, and he's actually really good now. He's got an interesting passive here that's going to put a shield buff onto people, or onto him, if he loses 10% of his max HP in 1 hit, and then also puts a continuous heal himself if he drops below 50%, and that books down to a 1-turn cooldown, so that's happening a lot. So he's going to keep himself alive, and he's also going to keep a team member alive very well with a heal, increased speed buff, and reflect damage, and then it also gives everybody an ally protection and gives him an increased defense. That's a ton going on there in that skill. Pretty crazy skill. Good champion now. And then he's also gonna place a reflect damage on a random ally for 2 turns on this A1. That's not the greatest, but you know, it's something. Next we've got Marksman. Marksman's not great. I probably wouldn't recommend anyone build this guy for Faction Wars or really anywhere. This might be able to hit, but it's a pretty low chance to ignore defense. And I don't really know if I've ever really seen this guy used anywhere, to be honest. Not a great option for Faction Wars, attack based, not doing a lot of utility for you, so I would not bring this guy in. Next we've got Jingle Hunter, who is a pretty decent arena champion, and he does bring a speed aura for you. So if you've got him built up for arena already, he can definitely come in. Again, going to be squishy as an attack-based champion, but he does do pretty good damage, and he's got some turn meter reduction here on this A3, which is nice, and it also fills his turn meter a bit. This one can put out freezes for you, but it's a little hard to time it right so that it is killing the enemy for that to work. But if you do pull this off, that's really nice for Faction Wars. And then his A1 is going to put out a decreased speed out there if the attack is critical. And it's got a 50% chance to land, so a little bit extra utility on the A1. Pretty good champion. I'd say he's underrated, but he's going to be hard to keep alive in Faction Wars, so I wouldn't build him up specifically for Faction Wars. Just use him if you got him, and you can keep him alive. Next we got Battle Sage. She can be useful for her cleanse. Where is it? Here we go. No, it is the A2, which puts out a increased attack that can't be removed, and removes all debuffs. So that can be pretty useful for Faction Wars. Her A3 is just putting a revive on death on one ally, and they're probably just going to get killed again right after that. So not the greatest ability there for the A3. And the A1 is an AoE, so I would recommend, if you do want to try her out in Faction Wars, put her in a stun set and have her doing some CC for you on that A1, and she could be pretty useful. And then we've got Exemplar, probably the worst model in the game for any champion. I don't know what they were thinking here. Don't really see her getting used a lot. She can put out this freeze and block cooldown, which is pretty decent, but it's a single target for that. And then we've got a 3 times at random, which can put out a weaken for you, which isn't awful, but it's not great. And then this A1 that can place an extra hit if the attack is critical. So she could come in and do some damage for you, but her base stats just aren't that great, and she's not really that useful anywhere in the game, so she definitely needs a buff. So I want to call out a couple of these rares we've got here. The first being Apothecary, and he is better than a lot of legendaries in this game. Definitely better than most epics as well. He's got this A3 that gives your team increased speed and also fills turn meter. And that comes down to a 3-turn cooldown, so he's doing this a lot. You just need to pump up his speed to get him going fast, and he will make everyone else go fast as well. And he's got this awesome heal on his A2. It is single target, but it's a pretty big heal, especially if it crits. I wouldn't say you need to go out of your way to try to focus crit rate on him. Just make him tanky and as fast as you can, and he'll do a ton of work for you. I do still use him on my 21 clears, even though I've got some of the other legendaries and epics. He is just that good. The other one that a lot of people might have just because they started out with her is going to be Elaine. She can come in as your damage dealer if you can keep her alive. She does a ton of damage. She's got some AoE hits here. And yeah, she can come in and do a lot of damage for you. You just have to be able to keep her off the floor. And then the last one I want to talk about is going to be Relequary Tender. And she's been mentioned a lot as a great champion in a lot of other guides out there, but I just want to reinforce that. She is incredible. Her kit doesn't look that crazy at first glance, maybe. I didn't think so when I was told to build her ages ago, but after I did, she helped me clear almost every single stage 20 dungeon in the game. And again, she's still on my team for stage 21, which is about a 4 or 5 minute clear. So she is a great champion. She's got a revive on her A3 and a little bit of a turn meter fill on that as well. Comes down to a 5-turn cooldown when booked. And then she's got this awesome A2, which is a full team cleanse and a 15% continuous heal on everybody. And that comes down to a 3-turn cooldown, so that's up a lot. And then she does have this decrease attack. It's the small version on her A1. I wouldn't really recommend building her with high accuracy just for that. I would just focus on speed and defensive stats just so she can stay alive and revive people as they fall. But yeah, great champion, and I think when you do start running her and see how often she's doing that cleanse and heal, you will also come to the realization that she is a lot better than she looks. So great champion. If you've got her, I would highly recommend building her. She is a void rare, but you know, eventually you will pull one of these, as she is just a rare. So yeah, great champion, and she can definitely help you out early game and still usable in game. She's on my Ice Golem team as well, and one way you can build her is in a poison set for a little bit of extra utility, and that can actually end up being quite a bit of damage by the end of a long fight, like a boss fight on stage 21. It actually puts out reasonable amounts of damage just due to that toxic set. So great champion. Definitely build one if you've got one for Faction Wars. She will help you out a ton. And just quickly, there's a couple other rares that aren't awful. Early Faction Wars, I did use Eris here for a little while at level 40 or 50. Her kind of main use is going to be this counterattack when an ally is attacked. It can help you out in the early stages, but she doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, and that's only happening like once a turn, so not that great. She does have a remove 1 random debuff from all allies and a increased speed, so that's not too bad for an A2. And then she can get an extra turn if the target is killed on her A1 there, which is why I was using her early on in Faction Wars. That can cycle pretty quickly, and you can wipe out teams as long as you can one-shot them quickly. But towards the later stages, you're not able to do that, and so she kind of loses some of her punch. But not an awful champion for a rare, and you could definitely use her early on. And then we've got Fencer. She's an okay like single target damage dealer. Not a great option for later stages of Faction Wars, but again, early on, if you've got one, you might be able to use her at level 40 or 50 for the very early stages. And then we've got Hyria, who is one of the few ally attack champions out there. Not the best ally attack. It only brings in 2 random allies. And you know, that can end up being a pretty big nuke depending on who she brings in with her, but you don't get to choose, so not a great option, but you know, somebody in the rare category that is certainly usable. And she can put out some poisons for you as well, which is okay for some of the bosses. But yeah, not the best champion, but certainly a usable one, especially for early factions. And that pretty much does it. Nobody down here in the uncommons I don't think is worth bringing in. But yeah, lots of great options in the epics and rares. And then pretty much all of these legendary champions are really great legendaries for at least some parts of the game. And most of them are very usable in faction. Alright, so let's take a look at my team and how I have geared them. So first up, we've got Arbiter. I actually have 2 Arbiters. That's one of the few dupes that you can get and still be pretty happy about it. Let's see, which one is it? So I did pull an extra one that I use in 3v3, and this is going to be the main one here, a bit faster. My Arbiter is pretty fast, and that's basically what you're focused on. 99.9% of the time you're just going to make her as fast as you possibly can. So all speed gear and the highest speed rolls that you can get. You don't really care what the main stats on the gear are, just as long as they're the fastest speed rolls that you've got, you throw them on your Arbiter and hope that the rest of the stats end up looking pretty good. Mine is a pretty well geared, fairly tanky. I could do with a little bit more defense there, but decent health and very fast. So that's Arbiter. Next we're going to go to Lysandra. Also very fast. Again, all speed gear on your Lysandra. She can actually hit really hard. I used to have her crit rate maxed when I used her in dungeons, and she hits like a truck for a support champion if you've got her attack and crit rate up a bit. But generally not how you're going to focus on building her. You're just, again, going for that speed. But she needs enough accuracy to land that turn meter decrease. And yeah, that's basically all you need. Accuracy and speed on your Lysandra is going to be enough. Next up, we've got Tyrell. I would say most people are probably going to have him in a lifesteal set. He does come into clan boss, especially early on. And then lifesteal is pretty good for him elsewhere too, just so he can kind of self-sustain. But yeah, I don't have a great set of gear on him here, and this is probably about what I used when I cleared it the first time. He's got a clan boss speed here, you can tell, and then pretty high defense, not crazy though, 100% crit rate and enough accuracy to land his debuffs. So that is Tyrell. Next we do use Royal Guard when we're trying to do this fast, but like I said, he's not necessary. He's in a Savage set, pretty high crit damage, 100% crit rate, and enough accuracy to land his debuffs. He is going really slow. I do need to bump his speed up at some point, but he's working for me right now. I mostly just use him for Spider at the moment. Then we've got Relequary Tender, and she's in that Toxic set that I was talking about. She is going pretty fast. I did not focus accuracy on her. About 3k defense and very healthy HP pool there. No crit damage, no accuracy. You really just focus on speed and defensive stats for her, and she is going to do a great job for you. Similar story with Apothecary. He doesn't need accuracy. He can do with some crit rate just so that A2 heal can crit, but again, you're just focusing on defensive stats and speed for him. He's going pretty fast. He used to be a lot faster when he was my main arena speed booster, but he has had gear stolen from him multiple times, and as you can see, he's just kind of in a random assortment of stuff right now. but he still works just fine. Just show the books and masteries for all these champions. Arbiter, you're definitely going to want to fully book. You're going to end up using her all the time, so absolutely want to book her out. And then for masteries, I will show you what I chose for her. This one I came down into timely intervention, and another good option on an arbiter would be something like this, and here I came down into the resistance. Either way can work. Two slightly different builds there, both are good. For back here, for the Lysandra, she's got a little bit of a dungeon setup. Again, you could come down into timely intervention, accuracy here instead of this offense tree. But I did kind of start out using her a lot in dungeons. I still do use her a lot in dungeons for that matter. So having War Master is never a bad idea on anyone you're going to use in a dungeon, and gives her a little bit of extra damage. I probably will at some point end up switching her over to accuracy just for higher level arena play. Next, and she's also fully booked. Next we got Tyrell, also booked. You get a lot more debuff chance there, a little bit of cooldown here and some damage. Mostly if you're going to book Tyrell, I'd say the one that you really need to do is going to be this A2. Probably skip the others if you got lucky with books. And then for his masteries, also a clan boss build. We're coming down into War Master over here, and then just picking up the accuracy and the support tree. Book, Evil Eye is great on everybody. You can get it on if they're already building accuracy to land that turn meter decrease on their first hit. And then we've got Master Hexer to extend the debuffs that he places, and Sniper. Sure why I've got that. One of my first champions. Next up, we got Royal Guard, also booked. When you get a Royal Guard, you're probably going to book him out because he is just that good. You definitely don't necessarily need this extra 20% damage here on the A2, but it is helpful. The cooldown on this is pretty nice, and also a slightly higher chance there of landing that decreased speed is always good. For masteries, came down into Flawless for some extra crit damage. It's kind of got a just deal more damage set over here in the offense tree. Accuracy and support, Evil Eye for the turn meter decrease, and Sniper again. Next, we have Relequary Tender. She is booked, and she doesn't have one of her last little tier 6 masteries here, tier 5, but she's got the rest. Also in War Master for dungeons. Out of everyone, I'd say you could definitely get away with not booking her, but like I said, I used her a lot early on in my dungeon runs, so I did end up booking her, and I don't regret it at all. She's a great champion. For that last one, you could come over here and maybe grab Spirit Haste, just in case someone is dead. She'll be going a little bit faster and pick them up quicker, possibly. That would be an option for that last spot. And then we've got Apothecary. He is coming over into Giant Slayer. I did use him on Clan Boss in the beginning, and he's got that 3-hit A1, so I went with Giant Slayer for him. And then also over here in the support tree, he doesn't need accuracy, so we came down health and just picked up a couple of little things here, mostly just for this lasting gifts to extend his buffs that he's casting, and also the book for a little bit of extra stats. As you can see from his gear, though, I'm not really gaining much from that. I guess I do have one speed set there on him now, but at one point it was useful. And then for the runs that I'm going to show, I'm actually not going to put Royal Guard in there. I'm just going to show it to you with just Tyrell, just so you can kind of see how quickly and effectively you can clear it without someone like a Royal Guard or another big damage dealer. That's 20 and 21 cleared without Royal Guard in there, but if you do put him in, it'll cut the times about in half, I would say, on average. You can kind of sub him in place of the Apothecary or Lysandra or Reliquary Tender, and you could put anyone else in there that was offering you a little bit more CC if you don't have Lysandra, obviously. She is very helpful, but definitely not necessary. I've done it without her in there. That is basically going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully this was helpful. I do think this is definitely one of the more accessible factions. The boss isn't that hard at the end. He's just kind of freezing you up, and if you have Reliquary Tender in there, she can do a lot of cleansing as long as she didn't get frozen herself. But yeah, if this video helped you, please like and subscribe, and I hope you all have a good one.